Peter Schmitz, author, speaker, entrepreneur. So business owners and entrepreneurs, what drives you? Every day, what drives you? In your business, in your passions, your hobbies, what drives you? Today I'm going to talk about a little bit about what drives me with my story. And the purpose of your story or my story is because you connect with people. And you connect at a much deeper level. And that's why we're going to talk about drive. So many of you know I'm an amputee, right? I even told you that. But you don't know the story behind it. So 49 years ago, this summer, I was 16. I lost my arm in a meat grinder. I was working at a local butcher shop making hamburger. I wasn't very good at it. There was no guard on the machine. They took it off for some reason. It's a long story. But I put my arm in pushed it in a little bit too far, and once it catches, if you know anything about a meat grinder, it won't stop. There's nothing that'll stop it. I'm very lucky that my boss was there to turn it off because my arm is only off to here. Otherwise, it would have ripped it out at my shoulder. That's how powerful those machines are. And so at the time, I could tell you all the gory details, but that's not the point of the message today. I was a competitive swimmer, and I was the best breaststroker on the team at that time. I was 16. And so I'm laying in the hospital a couple days later, and my coach comes in to see me, and I remember this vividly. I'm laying in bed because I'm still on a lot of drugs, and he comes around my left side, which is where my arm is, and it's all bandaged up. And I said, I look up at him, I say, I guess I won't be swimming anymore. And he looks at me, he says, yes, you will. I'll see you in the fall. That's all he said. Clyde was a man of very few words. You didn't argue with your coach when you were 16. And so he left the room, and I went on, got better. And that fall, I went back to swimming. And as Keith said, you don't go very fast with 1.5 arms. So I was on the senior varsity team, and since I couldn't keep up, he bumped me to the junior, to the subs, and then all the way down to the reserves, which is the little kids. And that wasn't very fulfilling to me. So long story short, I got my my second arm. This was the swimming arm we had built. This arm is 50 years old for you guys that are young. It's been retired. I have a new one. But this got me back to my old times. And then 2 years later, as a senior, I competed in the National YMCA swim meet. And so it was pretty interesting because in breaststroke, you have to touch with 2 hands. So I got disqualified. The referee couldn't see that I had, and then my coach had to go tell him that I only had 1 hand, so they let me go. They didn't know what to do with amputees back then. Now we're called disabled athletes. So this was my first arm and got me back. So the question is, why did I keep swimming? Why did I go from the top to the bottom and work my way all the way back? Why didn't I quit? I had a perfectly good reason to quit. I was 1 arm. I was going pretty slow. And so many years later, some of you guys know Greg Cherney. I got involved with triathlons. Summer of 2013, I did my first triathlon. Had no idea what I was doing. Trained a little bit. We went to Galena. If anybody knows anything about Galena, can I see the timer? What Galena has lots and lots of hills. And when you're an amateur, beginner, hills are very hard. I couldn't make it up the hills. I had to walk up the hills with my bike. I had a mountain bike, not a racing kind of bike like I have now. And when I got to the run, the first mile was all uphill. I had to walk. I couldn't run. It took me 4.5 hours to do a race that today takes me an hour and a half. 4.5 hours. The police were following me to finish the race. I was the only one on the track. I got somewhere on the run, and they were picking up one of the aid stations, and I said, "Is this the end?" And because I thought I was at the finish line, because they were picking it up. And they said, "No, but it could be." I said, "There's no way I'm quitting now. I'm this far into the race." So why didn't I quit? I'm the only one out there. I get to the end, and only Greg and Doug Jones are there, my 2 friends. There's not a cup, there's not a thing on the ground. I never got a finisher medal, because you always get a finisher medal. So none of that happened. Greg gave me a medal, but why didn't I quit? And I'm going to suggest to you, your drive comes from within. And as I was writing my book, I had to do a lot of soul searching about this topic. What was pushing me to do this kind of crazy stuff? Because I've jumped out of airplanes. I've learned to windsurf. I've lost an arm like this. This is another one of my arms. This is my second arm ever because I lost the first one like this water skiing when I was 17. And I was with my brother. This was the summer after I lost my arm. I hooked this on the rope, and I tried to get up on slalom ski, and I fell, and he dragged me until all the straps broke and it sank. It was a very expensive day at the beach, and I had to actually pay for this because Workman's Comp said we're not buying you another arm a year later. So they'd pay for them now, but that's another interesting story. So as I was interviewing some of the disabled athletes that I compete with on Dare to Try, it's an interesting common phenomena. Why do we do this crazy stuff? Why does a guy that's blind compete in a triathlete? Why does a guy with one leg run a triathlon? They don't have to. And it's because this is where the drive comes from, is I'm trying to prove to myself that I'm still whole. And it's not to prove to anybody else, because all the sports I do is timed. It's always me against my time. It's not me against, yes, I like to win. I'm not going to deny that. I like to win. But I always judge my time by how did I do compared to last time. And I could tell you every race and how I've progressed over the last 5 years, because I track all that. And why? It's drive. It's drive. And you all have it, and I'm suggesting it's a big part of your story. And sharing your story is a powerful way to connect with people, because it connects you at the heart level. It's an emotional connection versus a business connection. There's nothing wrong with business, but the heart connects people. And so I share that story because it's who I am, and it took me a long time to figure it out. I didn't write my story till I was in my 60s, and I really had to do this soul searching to figure out what it was. I knew I was driven, but what was it? And you know, it happened at 16. It was a very defining moment when my coach comes in and says, "I'll see you in the pool." I had no idea what that meant at the time, but here it is a lot of years later. I'm still swimming. And poetic justice, when I swim in the triathlons for the disability group, there's no devices allowed in the water. I cannot wear this in the water. Yeah, so I have had to learn to swim with 1.5 arms, and I'm almost as fast as I was with this arm today with 1.5. Now, I wear this when I compete in the Ironman because the rules are different, and I can wear this. The race is longer, so the arm helps, but in all of my para-triathlon events, like where I got that third time, I was 1.5 arms against able-bodied guys. So what drives me, it took this to prove to myself that I'm a whole person. And I always measure myself against the able-bodied group by my time. So what's your story? I would challenge you to figure it out, because it's what's driving you. And when you can share it, you will connect with other people. My book is called One Inspires Many, Be the One. So be the one. Thank you.